Hi, this is a new series that we're starting here at Legacy Ministries called the Corner Chair Chat. And its reason it's called that is we have a chair that we've done some rearranging with here in our living room and our house. And there's a reading corner, and we've got a nice, comfortable chair. And so that's from where I am doing these videos of this series. Therefore, it's going to be called the Corner Chair Chat. And I'm Pastor Jim of Legacy Ministries, Fort Dodge, Iowa. And so I hope you are challenged through these videos as well as uplifted. And if you like what you are hearing and seeing, I would encourage you to hit that thumbs up and also subscribe. So for this inaugural corner chair chat, I would like to begin by asking a question. And the question is this: what have you learned lately as a Christian that has made you more loving toward others? You see, this is the most important question. Notice that the question isn't, what have you learned lately as a Christian that has made you adhere more to a moral code? Notice that the question wasn't, what have you learned lately as a Christian that has made you more righteous? Notice the question wasn't, what have you learned lately as a Christian that has made you stand harder on a certain conviction that you might hold? No, the question was, what have you learned lately as a Christian that has caused you to be more loving? Now, why is this first question, the most important? It is because of how Jesus answered a question once posed to him. I would invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 22, and I'm going to be reading verses 34 to 40. And let me read these 7 verses. And this is what Matthew writes. And when the Pharisees had heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered themselves together, and one of them, a lawyer, questioned him, testing, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Lord your God with the whole of your heart and with the whole of your soul and with the whole of your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang the whole law and prophets. Now, one of the things I really love about how Jesus did things was that he not only answered the question, he gave them a bonus answer. He not only gave them the greatest commandment, he gave them the second one, which is like to it, which is very closely connected. And let me show you how. He said, as he answered the question, he said that loving God and loving others is the focus, not adhering to a moral code or a system of contrived righteousness or standing on certain convictions and making sure you're not tainted by somebody else around you. So for the follower of Jesus, the most important question we must answer is, how has what I have learned lately as a Christian caused me to be more loving toward God and toward others? Now, I want to point out a couple of things about how Jesus answered this question. Here's the first thing. There's a downward flow to this process that Jesus described. First commandment, second commandment. It all starts with God. That's the first commandment, as do all things. The Apostle John tells us in his first letter that God is love. So because God is love, he also loves others. Do you recall what is arguably the most recognized verse from the Bible? John 3:16, which tells us that God loves the world, the whole world. Everyone in it is loved by God. Furthermore, the Apostle Paul says in his letter to the Romans that God demonstrates this love in real action. Romans 5:8 says, God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. The end of the downward flow is God's purpose in giving the law and speaking through the prophets, which is now how the process begins a different direction in its flow. The purpose is now to include us, who are his followers, in this process, but in a reversed upward flow. And that's the second thing. There is an upward flow after we have been included in the process. It starts back up with the law and the prophets through which God had spoken. Now, how does that work? It was through the prophets and the law that God gave direction of how to love. and he gave examples of what that love looked like in real life. Let me give you an example, one from the law and then one from the prophets. In the law, God gave, when people were harvesting their crops, they were not to harvest all the way to the edges of the fields. They were to leave the edges of the fields unharvested, so that those who were in need of food would be able to glean these edges and be able to survive. They would be able to go in and pick the rest of the fields and have food. An example from the prophets would be Isaiah 58. The people of Israel were being obedient to the command to fast. God had made that command. But they were only concerned about the letter of the command, not the spirit, meaning the reason behind why God gave the command in the first place. You see, they were fasting, but they were using it as a type of savings plan. They wouldn't take what they didn't consume that day. They would take it and just use it the next day for the next meal. And God was not pleased with this. And he was not pleased because the reason for the fast was to take the food not consumed and give it to those who did not have enough to eat. It was not meant as a personal savings plan. It was meant to be to cause people to love people in practical ways, to love others. And that love is directed toward others. In other words, people, other humans. This is a very important next step because it is on the practical level. The Apostle John in his first letter, 1 John 4:20 to be specific, says, if a person says he loves God but hates his brother, he is a liar. For whoever does not love a brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. So showing and demonstrating love to those around us demonstrates that we love God. This step in the upward journey cannot be skipped or missed because it is of vital existence and vital importance. Love of and for God is not genuine unless one is loving those around him or her in practical ways. It cannot just be in words. It must be done in action. And loving action lifts other people up. And again, that is just how Jesus demonstrated that love. He gave us a beautiful and a perfect example and the ultimate example. For what did he say? No greater love has anyone than this, to lay down his life for his friends. And that love does not end with our friends and those who are like us. Remember, when God sent Jesus to die, the ultimate act of love, he did so for all people, even those who were his enemies. Our love must be extended in practical ways to those who would hate us and or who are not like us, or who think differently than us, or who look differently than us, or who have a different lifestyle than us, or who have a different position than us. So let me take us back to the opening question. How has what you as a Christian learned lately that has caused you to be more loving toward others? You see, what often happens among Christians is that what is learned causes us to be more moral and upright individuals. It causes people to be more righteous or to hold more fervently to a moral code or a list of religious principles or certain religious stances that then cause them to take certain actions, like, I don't know, refusing to bake a cake. But that is not what it is about. Jesus, remember, said that the law and the prophets hang on loving God and loving others, and that in practical ways. Now, there will be those who will say that we are supposed to be righteous. And yes, but actually God calls us to be holy as he is holy. Holiness and righteousness are not synonymous. They are not the same thing. Now, while righteousness is encompassed in holiness, holiness describes the whole of God's character, not just his righteousness. In holiness, righteousness is often tempered by love and mercy. In holiness, how righteousness is displayed is shaped by love and mercy. If it wasn't, then all of us should be condemned to eternal punishment, because that is what God's righteousness demands. But in his holiness, he didn't do that. Because of his loving character, his righteousness was tempered by his love and mercy. And it is because of his love and mercy that God created the plan of salvation for those who would believe and therefore not experience condemnation and eternal punishment. That is righteousness shaped by love and mercy. And it's the same for us. If our righteousness demonstrated in practical situations is not shaped and molded by love and mercy toward and for others, then we just don't get it. And what we have learned as followers of Jesus is useless because it has not caused us to love more, but actually less. So, what have you learned lately as a follower of Jesus that has caused you in practical ways to love others more? Or has it just caused you to be more concerned about not being tainted in some way if you take a certain action? If what we are learning isn't causing us to be more loving, then we need to start learning differently. We need to start getting different teachers because we are all learning. And what we are learning is to be loving. But if we're not, then what we're learning in reality to be as a Pharisee. And it was to the Pharisees that Jesus made the charge that even though they knew the scriptures like the back of their hands, he told them they had never heard the voice of the Father. They had never heard the voice of God because they didn't get it. Because what it had caused them to be was unloving and condemning of those who they saw as sinners. If all you're learning from the Bible and from those who are teaching it to you isn't causing you to be more loving, and that in practical ways, then I would suggest you need to check to see if you've actually heard the voice of the Father. So how will you answer that first question? I hope that you will answer it by saying that yes, you are becoming more loving toward others who aren't like you because of what you have been learning. May God bless you.